Within a dark and menacing castle, the Demon Lord is getting ready to begin his conquest to take over the world, and to do that, he summons his 4 demonic generals: Olmandra the Inferno, Sylphid the Storm, Gnome the Earthen Bastion, and finally he summons the most cynical and soulless of them all, an underpaid Japanese salaryman. Danusuke started working for his company as an insignificant salaryman, but he was hope-filled, and surely he would make his way up the promotion ladder at some point. However, while Danusuke was working harder for the sake of the company, his colleagues were all kissing up to their boss, so they ended up getting promotions while Danusuke ended up getting shipped off to another country to work on expansion. Upon arrival, Danusuke found that literally nothing was getting done because the site had no funding. He tried to convince his boss to approve more funding so they could buy the necessary equipment, but that would cost money, so his boss refused and yelled at him for wasting money. The locals couldn't care less about the job if they weren't going to be given the necessary tools, so they left and Danusuke ended up having to do everything by himself. However, after seeing how hard Danusuke was working even though he was by himself, the locals were inspired and soon returned to help him out. But just when he finally got everything up and running, he had a call from his boss, and at first he thought his hard work was finally being recognized, so he would be getting a much-needed bonus. But he was dead wrong. They didn't even throw him a pizza party. All he got in return for his hard work was even more work, as they decided to transfer him to another country for a separate expansion project. By this point, Danusuke had begun to question his life choices because he realizes that he is wasting his life for a company that clearly doesn't care about him. But while he is distracted by his existential dread, he isn't paying attention to his surroundings, so he ends up getting run over by Moped-kun. That kind of explains how he ended up here. But Danusuke thinks there must have been some kind of mistake because there's no way the Demon Lord meant to summon a guy like him. However, the Demon Lord calls him by name and tells him that he summoned him here to become his new overseas manager. He's received extensive reports on all the hard work Danusuke had put in. He was assigned to an overseas branch of his company, learned the local language, and gained the trust of the locals to successfully run the new business. That is why the Demon Lord thinks Danusuke would be the perfect candidate for one of his 4 elite generals. Danusuke is kind of happy since this is the first time anyone has ever actually acknowledged all the hard work he has been putting in, but he is a bit hesitant to accept the position of Demon General, because that would technically mean he is betraying humanity. However, the Demon Lord mentions that the position will come with full workers' benefits, and all of a sudden, Danusuke doesn't think joining the Demon Army is such a bad idea anymore. On top of that, the Demon Lord actually respects workers' rights, so he won't force Danusuke to accept the position if he doesn't want to. All this makes Danusuke really want to join. When he thinks about it, he remembers how he was always treated like trash back in his old company, and he doesn't think trash like him deserves to have such an important job, so he is about to reject the Demon Lord's offer. But before he does, the Demon Lord yells that he can't let the way he was treated at his former company dictate his worth. That place was run by obnoxious and selfish managers who only cared about themselves, so they would never pay attention to all the work Danusuke was putting in behind the scenes. But the Demon Lord won't make that mistake because he is well aware of how valuable Danusuke is as an employee. So will he choose to go back to his old company and be treated like trash once more, or will he stay here and help build the Demon Army? Danusuke is still a little hesitant to accept, but all of a sudden, Olmandra speaks up and says she objects to the idea of having a weak human in the Demon Army. Sylphid and Gnome also object to the idea because they can't see how someone like him could possibly help the Demon Army. The Demon Lord understands why they would be skeptical, so he decides to put Danusuke through a test to show the others just how capable he really is. Danusuke starts freaking out and tries to explain to the Demon Lord that he has no powers, so he can't fight, but it's already too late because Olmandra has decided to attack him at full force to see what he's made of. She heard something about otherworldly humans possessing special powers, so tells Danusuke to try and stop her deadly kick. However, before the kick could land, the Demon Lord steps in front of her and stops it. Olmandra asks why the Demon Lord interrupted her, but he points out that she didn't wait for him to finish talking, so she ended up misunderstanding the situation. Look at poor Danusuke over there, he got so scared that he passed out from the shock. The others are surprised because Olmandra wasn't even trying that hard, so for Danusuke to pass out from an attack like that, it makes it seem like he's just a regular human. The Demon Lord tells them that Danusuke really is just a regular human, and that makes them all object to the decision even more. The Demon Army is made up entirely of monsters, so if a human were to enter the power struggle between the demons and demi-humans, then he would get eaten alive almost instantly. The Demon Lord admits that there is a bit of friction between the factions of his army, but that's exactly why he needs Danusuke and his skill set. He doesn't expect him to have a sturdy body or incredible attack power, but rather what he expects from him is his resourcefulness. Just then, Danusuke finally regains consciousness and begins pleading for them to let him go because there's no way he can deal with attacks like what Olmundra just tried to hit him with. The Demon Lord tells him to calm down and explains that he won't be expected to fight, but the Demon Lord does intend to give Danusuke a fitting exam. He explains that the demon army is currently trying to create a pact with the surrounding tribes, and so far they've managed to reach an agreement with the salamanders and werewolves, but negotiations with the Minotaur tribe has been quite difficult, so Danusuke's test will be to do whatever it takes to form a pact with the Minotaur tribe. With Danusuke's superb negotiation skills, it should be simple enough to gain the Minotaur's trust and reach an amicable agreement, but Danusuke doesn't see anything simple about negotiating with Minotaurs. However, the Demon Lord seriously believes he can pull it off, so he tells Danusuke to ask Olmundra if he has any questions. Afterwards, Olmundra leads Danusuke down the hall so he can begin negotiating with the Minotaurs, but she thinks this is a huge waste of time since there's no way a human like Danusuke can negotiate with Minotaurs. Danusuke thinks she's right about him being useless, but the Demon Lord seems so sincere when he was talking about how much he needed Danusuke, and all Danusuke has ever wanted was to have his hard work recognized, so he wants to live up to the Demon Lord's expectations of him as much as he can. Just then, Olmundra tells Danusuke that they've arrived at the meeting room where the chief of the Minotaur tribe is staying, and Danusuke is a bit shocked by the sheer size of the room, but Olmundra explains that it's perfectly normal since the Minotaurs are big monsters. And as a fair warning, she tells him that Minotaurs are known to be quite ferocious, so if he's not careful, he's going to end up getting himself trampled to death. As Olmundra opens the door, Danusuke has no idea what to expect from the Minotaur chief, but he intends to do his best to negotiate no matter what. However, once he actually sees the Minotaur chief, he freaks out. There's no way he could negotiate with someone like Terius without instantly dying. Olmundra feels bad for him, so she offers to help him out with the negotiations, and Danusuke is really thankful for the help. But then he sees Olmundra start arguing with Terius, so he gets the feeling that negotiations aren't going so well. Olmundra doesn't understand how Terius could be dissatisfied with everything they provided for him, and Terius says she doesn't understand what he's saying, so no headway is made on the pact, and Olmundra leaves the meeting room. Olmundra really doesn't understand why it's so hard for Terius to agree to the pact now when he was initially open to the idea. Just when they were about to finalize the agreement, he started yelling nay, nay over and over again. Olmundra came back several times to see if he would agree to the pact again, but all he would ever say was nay, so she couldn't understand what he wanted. Olmundra can't possibly see a resolution, so she's going to leave the rest for Danusuke to figure out, although she fully expects him to fail miserably. Danusuke starts having a full-on panic attack because he thinks there's no way to get around this mess, but as he is walking through the halls trying to figure out what to do, he spots a bar sign and decides to head in to clear his head. The bartender gets him a warm towel to calm him down, and Danusuke orders a drink while he sits down to think. He would like to work on the negotiations, but there's nothing he can do if the client refuses to negotiate. However, Danusuke then realizes that Terius might not actually be refusing to negotiate after all. He has experienced a situation like this before where a client was constantly telling him no, but when he looked into the client's eyes, he could tell what he really meant, and both sides were eventually able to reach an agreement. He now knows what he needs to do, so he finishes his drink and heads outside to do what businessmen do: negotiate. Meanwhile, Olmundra is back in the Demon Lord's throne room giving a report about her conversation with Terius, and it didn't lead to any meaningful breakthrough, so she doesn't think Danusuke will be able to achieve anything either, especially since he just arrived in this world today, but the Demon Lord still has faith in him, so he tells her to wait and see what Danusuke can accomplish. She doesn't understand what the Demon Lord sees in Danusuke, but she decides to go check up on him to see if he's alright, and when she does, she finds him in the process of stuffing several bags with hay. She asks him what he's doing, so he tells her that he intends to go have a good conversation with Terius. She tries to tell him that it's pointless since he's not willing to negotiate, but Danusuke still thinks there's a chance. He just needs to look Terius in the eyes and convey his emotions properly, so the two of them can understand each other. Olmundra notices that Danusuke looks a lot more confident than he did before, and without an ounce of fear this time, he walks into the meeting room to talk to Terius. The next morning, Olmundra comes into the meeting room to check if Danusuke is still alive, but when she looks inside, all she finds is a room full of hay, and neither Danusuke nor Terius in sight. At first, she thinks the negotiations must have failed, leading to a massive fight, but just then, Danusuke comes in and tells her everything is fine. In that case, she demands to know why there's hay all over their sacred demon castle, and more importantly, she asks where Terius went. Danusuke tells her that Terius is currently finalizing the pact agreement with the Demon Lord, but Olmundra can't believe Danusuke managed to get him to agree in just one night. He explains that he simply took the time to get to know Terius well, and that made the negotiation process really easy. Olmundra had thought Terius was refusing to negotiate because he kept yelling nay over and over, but in reality, Terius thought negotiations were going really well. Danuske had experienced something like this before with an international client, and the client in question was really enthusiastic about saying no to him, so Danuske thought the negotiation was going to end in failure. But to his surprise, the man then reached out for a handshake, so he realized it was all a misunderstanding. The same thing applied to Terius, so Danuske did a little research into minotaur culture and found out that minotaurs always bring hay with them to act as their bed whenever they go to someone else's home. So all that time, he was just trying to ask for his hay. And when Danuske figured that out, there were no more problems with the negotiation. Now, Olmundra realizes that she had misunderstood Terius and left him in that room to sleep on the cold floor, so she feels really bad. But Terius tells her it's alright since it was an honest mistake and shakes her hand to show that there are no hard feelings. As Terius is leaving, the demon lord comes up to Danuske and Olmundra and asks Olmundra if she now understands why he wants to add Danuske to their ranks. Olmundra admits that Danuske really is skilled when it comes to negotiating, and since he passed the demon lord's test, the demon lord officially makes him one of his 4 generals and puts a bracelet on his arm as a symbol of his position. And as a sign of her new respect for Danuske, Olmundra formally introduces herself to him and says she looks forward to working with him as a new friend. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.